Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. So this is the fourth episode of a podcast, and in today's episode, we'll be reviewing the anime Sonny Boy. So get ready for a mind-blowing podcast adventure through the strange and wonderful world of Sonny Boy. This anime is like a mix of Lord of the Flies meeting Donnie Darko and Haruki Murakami, all wrapped into like a one crazy ride. So imagine waking up and finding yourself in a totally different world. That's what happens to a bunch of teenagers in Sonny Boy. They're trapped in these weird places called the worlds where the rules are different and anything can happen. It's like a crazy dream where you're constantly on an adventure. As they explore these strange worlds, they also have to deal with the usual teenage stuff, figuring out who they are, dealing with loneliness, and trying to find their place in the world that's totally out of control. So, Sorry Boy is like a mind bending trip that will make you think and feel. So, it'll be sure to stick with you long after you've finished watching the anime. And in this episode, we're going to be exploring that anime as a whole. So, the very first, let's start with the very first point of discussion. What are your guys' initial thoughts of the anime?
For me, I think it's uh, yeah, I would say in one word, I think it's a masterpiece. If you see, it's very uh, it's not a normal anime. It's not a mainstream anime. It's not a narrative anime. It's not manga based. So in that aspect, it's very different. But if you're not looking for a narrative anime, then it's a good watch. Very good watch.
Hmm.
I
Ash?
agree with Hardik. My first thoughts as soon as I watched the first episode was, uh, so I was hooked after the first minute itself. I was very impressed by the director. The way you just get sucked into it. There was no intro. There was no, telling you exactly what is happening. They just started off by introducing the characters, what's going on, and through the conversations, you're trying to gauge what is going on, and you can't stop after the first episode because you're trying to understand what exactly is going on. And the first episode ended on a cliffhanger, and that was a very impressive cliffhanger because then it just intrigues you. Okay, maybe this is what is going to continue in the next 12 episodes, but again, it breaks your whatever you had thought, your preconceived notion. So I really like that. The ending obviously was a bit, well, on the both sides, but we'll discuss that a bit down the road. But overall,
Hmm.
amazing anime and definitely deserves a couple of rewatches to understand better.
Hmm. So this anime is like a. I think that this is not the first, but I think this is the first complete series I think the director has got for himself. I'm not completely sure. He's One Punch Man's creator. He was not creator, but One Punch Man's season one's director. That shot him to fame when he directed when he directed One Punch Man. It came down in his second season because One Punch Man second season was terrible. But then people were waiting for his next, you know, show or anime. What do you call it? This was then developed in 2020 or 2019, and then he finished it and released it in 2021. Right. So one of the things that he wanted to explore, I think one of the things I read about this online was he wasn't trying to convey anything specific, right? He wanted to make it confusing for the he didn't want to make it confusing. He had an idea of what he wanted it to be, but when he finished writing it, he figured out that it was like a very confusing show, and he thought that it in itself is very intriguing, right? So, what do you guys think about that?
So I read so I saw one interview of the director, and in which he tries to break down his way in which he worked on it and what exactly he thought of when he was making it. And from what I can understand from the that was, and which is kind of obvious when you think about it, is that it's about basically when you're in this phase of life, when you're going from high schoolers and now you're going to enter the real world, and you're always protected by your teachers, your parents. You always have somebody who's going to tell you what to do, and now you're going to into this world which is completely cannibalistic. Okay, anything can happen to you. You don't know, and there's so many uncertainties, and there's so much confusion with what actually happens there. You feel underconfident, you know. So I think that is what he has tried to convey in each episode, some sort of a theme that he has tried to follow in each of them, and therefore just follow. So, for example, uh, I don't know if we should talk about this, but it's a sort of a spoiler. One of the character dies, and it's very humbling when you think about it, because in life you might have a couple of friends in high school who you're very close with and stuff, and in life it generally happens they'll just die out of nowhere, and that's how it's exactly shown. One episode back, everything's fine. Next episode, she just dies. That's how it starts. So I think that was a very great way to show that life is full of unpredictable things. So I think that's what he was basically trying to convey.
Mm,
I don't know when people, when the I don't know what was the conversation that you read about the director, but I think so that there is a very specific theme that is going on throughout the movie, throughout the series, and the that theme is changed. So like in each and every dialogue, you see Nagara as the main character. He is a person who is very passive in the first starting 3 to 4 episodes. He's a very passive guy. He's not able. He doesn't want to do anything. He thinks his uh, efforts would be in vain. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. He doesn't want to do anything. So he's a very passive guy in the starting movie, in the starting of the series. And I think the only theme that he's trying to do is that if you don't do anything, nothing will happen. There is the movie is about change and accepting to and willing to be able to change. So each character in each episode, there is a character and the story which person has not changed. Be it the dog or the cats. Like the dog has the dog episode, I think 6 or 7 it is, where he wants there's a possibility of him or a lover uh, going and making throughout life, but he himself is not able to overcome his own obstacles and not able to change himself. The same is with the cats. The cats of Mizo, they are also not able to let her go, and they continue to create problems for themselves as well as Mizoho. And that is what, like, even in every love story or romantic relationship that is shown in the show, the partners are not willing to change, and that is where the suffering is caused in each of the
mm,
episodes that is there. Uh, in this, even in the starting of the of series, Hoshi that is there, he in the starting he looks evil because he's thinking that they can't go home and things are absolutely defined. Nothing can be changed. But later on, he realizes that things can be changed, and he then is a good character. I would say he plays a positive character after that. Uh,
mm.
so the world, the concept of change and accepting and willing to change. I think that is the whole theme of the series.
Okay, so at least for me, when I started watching the anime, before starting the anime, the very first thing I looked at was the poster of the anime. And it's not like your everyday poster. It's not like it has like really well-defined, beautiful characters. Even when you go inside the anime, when you start watching the episodes, it's not like very basically the whole, what do you call it, the character sketching or designing drawings or whatever the inside of the anime is. When you start watching it, you don't really get hooked to it. I feel like that. Initially, when you think of animes, they have like very well-defined characters. All of them speak in a certain way. All of them have the whole set design or behind the background of it is like very beautiful in general, right? And this anime took like a very different turn, but that's only once you start watching it, you realize why it's important to the narrative of the show, right? So initially, I thought it was like a very lazy thing to do because I thought this is not going to be like a very good anime. It's going to be very boring, but it turned out to be really good. Once you start realizing what the anime is about, it turns out to be really good. So let's start discussing about this thing now. The animation aspect of it, right? What the unique art style and animation of Sonny Boy.
So I am currently watching One Piece. So like that's my most recent comparison, I would say. And the art style is very different, very significantly different. And I really like the pacing, honestly speaking. I think in One Piece, usually what happens is there's a lot of slow scenes. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot. But in this, it was just so fast, so quick paced, and I really, really liked it. In 25 minutes, the kind of content that they've been able to pack in is just amazing. The
Mhm.
sort of colors they've used, for example, when they end up on the beach. So after the first episode, when they're in complete darkness, blackness, and then the second episode, it's a complete reversal and it's completely blue. Or even in the last episode when they launch into space, second last episode when they launch into space and they get out of that sort of pod, and it's like there's so many things going around now. It could be so haphazardly done, but the
Mhm.
director, I don't know how he has worked on this. I honestly need to look at more interviews of this, but he did such a brilliant job in that it does not look as if he's just put random things. So I really love the way it was
It
created.
also has like a lot of visual elements in it, also like a lot of distorted scenes, weird, strange effects happening every now and then. Like in the moment they start the show, they're in a school which is a plane of nothing, and then in between the show it turns upside down. Then they fall in the end of the first episode, they fall into like a hole of nothingness. And they instantly, the moment they fall down, they come into like a different world where, like the beach world, the second episode. So they use like a lot of so much, what do you call it? Actually, the style is very unique. If you think about the designing of the characters in general, all of them have like very long, very thin, long hands kind of things. The face is like structured in a very particular way, not in your average anime sense. I think it adds to like the distortion effect they want to give in that, anime. They want you to feel like it's very confusing. Like he, as I mentioned, he wanted to make the audience feel a bit confused because it is something. What is it about, right? I think it adds a lot of it to the significance of it, and also using like very solid colors, right? He used. If you look at the sky, any episode, it's completely blue. There's no like any shade of any otherness. It's completely blue in all the scenes. It's like very gripping. Wants you to look at it. He doesn't want you to move away from it. That attracts you instantly into that scenes, right? So basically, I feel like he wants you to feel a bit confused. He wants you to fall into that, he wants you to feel like the characters. They just entered into a place where they don't know what's happening, right? And they want you to feel like, this is something very confusing. It's something's happening every moment. Something, you're falling down, your world is changing, your hands are looking very different. You're looking like a, I think that hands looking different, face looking different, and your these things are designed in such a way that it talks to like the adolescent phase you were speaking about. In that phase you go through a lot of changes, and that this is one of the phases where your body also changes. And this is like one of that aspects he wanted to maybe explore in this aspect, in this zone.
Not just about the colors and the designing aspect of it, even the frames that are there. If you see, the frames quickly jump from one frame to another, and it doesn't make much sense. Like in the anime, Nazumi, like that particular character's eyes are shown multiple times in between when that people are talking, or it just suddenly cuts to that. So that brings a little bit uncertainty and randomness into the show as well. And I think that is done of course deliberately, and yeah, it's not a very, I would say, aesthetically done anime, because it doesn't need to, because it also dealing with the reality of the fact that adolescent life is very difficult and it's very bizarre.
Hmm.
Bizarre is a good word for that.
Hmm. There's like a small line over here that the animation, while not always flawless, it's very generally fluid and expressive. It captures the character's emotions and reactions effectively, drawing the viewer into their inner world. Nice. It's right,
Yeah.
right. It's not like it's not what do you call it? It's not flawless exactly. It's like very fluid and expressive. It's very nice. It adds to like the storytelling and the cinematic thematic depth of it, I guess. Because the world is like very beautiful and unsettling, and also it tries to mirror the complexities of adolescence and human condition. So this is this is it. What do you guys think about the pacing of the narrative? Like as you mentioned, you thought it was very perfect. The pacing was perfect. For me, I was very confused about the pacing.
You're confused about the narrative or confused about the pacing?
Confused about the pacing. Personally, this was one place where I thought there was no pacing at all. Like everything was happening like because it's not like a linear story, right? It's like very non-linear. Every episode is having like a different story on its own, and it's like all of them are happening like in a very different timeline. You guys not timeline, but the time period apart from each episode is also very long. So it's very hard to keep track of what the pacing of the show is in general. Because in the start, it becomes, I think in the first 2 or 3 episodes, you know what's happening. There's a certain pace set. You think like there's going to be a story around this. In between, it's like very chaotic. It's very confusing. You don't understand what's happening. What's every episode is different. This is happening. They try to explore some different characters. This is happening. That is happening. And the end, they try to maybe in the last 1 or 2 episodes, they try to when Rajdhani comes back, they try to grip it back all together and consolidate it and try to finish the anime in a high note.
Okay, I think you're getting confused with the word pacing. Pacing, uh, what I'm referring to is basically the speed in which they are progressing. So, for example, one scene is going on, then the next scene, then the next scene. So, in that, what I mean is that it was very perfectly paced. The way they're cutting frames, like it never felt as if any frame was there for even a second more than it needed to be. That's what I mean by that.
Hmm.
Talking about Aman, what Aman is referring to, this is not a narrative animation. You're not going to get a particular plot throughout the 12 episodes. Each
Hmm.
episode has each episode, like you are right in saying that, first 3 episodes, it looks like Hoshi is the evil character, and something will happen between Nagara and Hoshi. That is what the characters would be, the plot would be, but that is dropped. And in
Hmm.
the 7 to 9 episodes, you think there's something called there's going to be something between Asakazake and Nagara, like that would be something would play out, and Miss Aki would also play a mastermind kind of role. But that also doesn't work. That is also is not followed up. So there is no. If you're looking for a plot or a narrative in this particular anime, you will be disappointed. You will not like it. This is not a narrative anime, as I said. You have to take each episode by its own value and understand it. If you see trying to connect to each episode, then you will think like, what is going on. It is not like that.
Hmm.
Because most of the
So,
mainstream animes are a particular story and they are based on a manga. This
hmm.
particular anime is not based on a manga. This is much more
Hmm.
experimental and
Hmm.
experiential than other animes out there. Popular animes are out there.
Hmm. No, my point was key, whether this is like what kind of anime this is or what it is. I'm saying key, it's very hard to follow the anime, I'm saying.
I mean,
It's
An
every
understandable.
episode,
episode, so there
No,
is there is no link between the episodes, I would say. Every episode is exploring something, and it's just that 20 minutes which is separately there. For example, the episode in which they're talking about baseball and the monkeys who can play baseball. How
hmm.
is that linked to anything else?
Hmm.
The first episode you can say is sort of setting up the scene. The last episode you can say sort of an epilogue. But between that, second to 11th, you can't really say anything.
Hmm.
There's no linkages, I would say. It's just the characters, and you're following the characters, how they're dealing with the problem that's coming, what kind of choices they're making, what kind of personality each of them have. And it's very amazing because I think it's a very true reflection of the real world, also the kind of characters that they face, that that there are.
Hmm.
No, but
Okay.
see, if you'll see, yes, in a story format, things are not in place, but it's much more thematically weaved in. If you say the baseball wala thing, uh, that particular story is also about change and how that person, the monkey that who wanted to play baseball, still kept his passion in spite of getting uh, only one hand. So that commitment to your passion and not changing, no matter what the entire world is saying, that commitment is also shown in that is explored in that particular story. So thematically, if you'll see, things will make sense. If you go by the story, no, it won't make sense to you.
This was also like one of those animes. I think maybe this is the first anime I've watched where they don't have like really, if you watch any anime, every character in that, even when they're not talking, they say something like a voiceover or something behind the scene is happening for some reason. There's always some kind of voiceover happening. There's some kind of, you know, background score that's
A
running.
narrator, basically a narrator.
Um, so you kind of understand what's not a narrator. Like I'm saying, assume you're the main character of a show. You're you're trying to
What's your name?
ask a girl out or something, but you play the whole scenario in your head. You do like that voice of whether she'll talk to me, whether she won't talk to me, this, that, and all thing. So you kind of get a hint of what the character is like in those scenarios. There's always some kind of background score running that's trying to grip you inside that whole emotion of that scene or something also. But in this, they don't really have any of that. If you think about it, there's no specific scene where those characters are thinking about anything specific. You're always just looking at them, and whenever their mouth is moving, you're looking at them moving. There's no background score to set the scene to what's happening in the show. You don't really get a feel of, they're not trying to bring you those things. They want you to explore those things on your own. Like, are you getting my point?
uh,
Yeah,
i'm I'm not very sure.
no, in
Basically,
that sense, uh,
Hmm.
uh, yes, the story it depends much more on expression of the characters and the dialogues of the characters than through any other tool that you can use in an anime. So even in the drawings or the sound, things are not very helpful in gauging what the characters are thinking, what is happening. But it is only through the dialogues and the expression, which is often not explored in anime, that by which you can get what is going on. But true in the sense, even in the, no, it doesn't have an opening role. Every anime that is there, you will have an opening role and a closing role. It doesn't have an opening role. Okay. So in that sense, music is not used very uh, heavily, but it is used in some sense. Like in the last 3 to 4 episodes, I particularly say that music is there where something of a narrative is built, where something there's much more linear. So you can see that music is used there. But after before that, there is new music and even also I would say it's much like the characters have not realized what world they are living in. But when they realize that, things started to look up and music is there. So I think in that sense, the role of music is also played very serving to the theme that is there. And if you also note the all the 11, like all the 12 episodes, the closing role that is there, the closing song, the closing theme, it's in the 11 episodes, it is auto tune. Like there is some musical instrument played, but in the last one, where they have traveled to the real world, there is only the guitar, the original guitar, and the and the voice of the musician, which is also reflected that they were in a much more stimulated and artificial world, and now they're in the real world, which is much more uncrafted.
There's also one more thing about the character development that these guys have done very differently. If you think about it, the lead character Nagara in this show, he's shown like a very introverted and like a very passive guy in the start, but they never specifically mentioned any reason for that, right? They never delve into one main reason to why they build that character in that specific way, if you think about it. Because if you think about any anime with this kind of character, like this depressed character, if you say, he has like a very traumatic backstory, people bullying him, this and that. Like they always delve into something. But for this character, specifically for Nagara, they never ever explored any reason for why he was like that. He was just someone who was tired from his own, like maybe reality, just like a normal average person who just doesn't want to be in the real world. Like a lot of kids maybe like that in that period, you could say. So he was like one, very, I think, well-built character in that sense. They didn't try to pour any unnecessary, what do you call, unnecessary expectations in a character that he was like very, he wanted to fall in love, he wanted to do this and that and everything in between. He was just someone who was very passive, introverted for no specific reason. He, he didn't want to do anything, but as the show moved on, when he realized what his powers were, he had to, step up and, play his role in the show. So this was like my main point is, what do you think about the character building of these characters?
I think it was very well done. Everybody was doing in the end what they wanted to do. Initially, nobody had any idea of what is going on. So, like in the starting, they didn't even have any voiceovers. They didn't have any explanation of, the behavioral traits of the characters. But for example, in the 9th, 10th episode, you have voiceovers. You have the woman who can read people's minds and stuff. And I think so for example, one of the things that I really liked was how in the starting, this guy, our lead, he's so passive, but in the end, he becomes somebody who knows that he needs to take action sometimes or the other. Like he has developed that. I do think that so for example, in the first episode, that bird that he left to die, but in the last episode, he saves that bird. A very simple way of showing that, he had changed. And that could also sort of symbolize that, the relationship between him and Nozomi, who is now somebody else who doesn't know him at all, that is going to, take a new form. Maybe it's also a representation of that. But in that opposite world, if you notice, Nozomi was with Asakaze, and he didn't feel like, yeah, and he didn't feel like somebody who was very conceited and who was very arrogant. So I think they've showed it very brilliantly how people change, how different people can affect you. Yeah.
Coming back to my point when I mentioned that they don't have voiceovers, so you don't really understand what you don't, or any kind of background score for any specific scene, so you don't really get to know what the characters are thinking about. The one perfect representation of that would be Asakaze, I would say. You don't really know what the guy is thinking in any episode, any moment he does something. It's like very different. You can't get into his head to realize what he's trying to do or what he's trying to, get off of in some situations. It's like he's someone who believes that he's gonna save the world as like God or something. But in some moments, like you realize what his true motives are. Sometimes when that in that girl episode who can read people's minds, you think that maybe he's like maybe someone who wants to just protect Nozomi. Maybe someone, but in the end, when Nozomi dies, he doesn't do anything or he can't do anything. It's like a very complex character in that sense.
They don't really say why she died, or look, they just mention that she died when they were trying to capture that guy, but they don't really say exactly what happened. So I don't think it's fair to blame the guy on that.
Hey, but my point is, he's like a very complex character. You don't really, that comes back to the point, right? They're not building up anything. They're giving you assumptions to make on the characters yourself. On every character, they're giving you the assumption. Like you understand what you want. This is the character we're showing you. You can assume it to be whoever you want. What he's trying to do, it's up to you. You can build your own story in your head. He's like one of those characters. I think many characters are like that in the show. They're giving you a lot of themes to explore on your own to understand what you feel was right.
I beg to differ because in like characters or like every character that is there, they are basically the archetypes, I would say, which every young person has, every young teenager has. So if you say Asakazake, if I'm saying it right, so he
Asakaze.
Asakaze, so he is the person, the teen guy who has wants some power, wants to be cool, wants to flaunt, and he realizes that even if he does that, he is not a grown up as or as a realistic person as Nagara or Nazumi becomes later on. Nagara later on and Nazumi is from the starting itself. And he feels powerless against that. And that is why he likes Nazumi. He says that in the anime as well. Then there is Rajdhani, that is a smart kid. There is an archetype, that a teen that is into technology, wants to do things, and is very nerdy, but is also like he's mature. Unlike other people, Rajdhani is mature and he understands things. When even he knows things, he doesn't say it just to blame things. Like if you say Mizuho, he knows the reality about Mizuho, but he doesn't say it out loud because it will only create much more problems, as it is shown in the second episode. Um, then Nagara character we have already explored. Nazumi, I think she's the only character that doesn't have an arc, and only for a reason because she's the light. She is the one person that is hopeful, optimistic all the time, and that is why the entire story progresses. And there are people like that who are very optimistic in every situation, no matter what is thrown at them. And there is no particular reason for them to be like this, but there are people like that.
More than optimistic, she also knew what is happening. She had control over that. Like, she wasn't being swayed by the audience. If she wanted to do something which she thought was, right, then she did it. Otherwise, for example, in the first episode, when everyone's like, oh, you should have a smartphone, and she's like, no. Like, you understand you're in a different world altogether. Right now, these are the only people you have. There's no connection to the outside world. And they're telling you that this is a lifeline which we are giving you. And you just say no. That's it. Even though you know that you could be ostracized for it. And she's
Mm.
completely okay with it. That's, I think,
Yeah,
also
like
the reasons why Asakza liked her, because she was not like him at all. He needed people to sort of see him as somebody, and she didn't. She had full confidence and faith in herself.
Mm. Mm.
yes, so it is mentioned in the anime as well that she is a person who believes in herself. So that is what people are like. If you believe in yourself, you don't need a validation. Unlike
Yeah.
Asakaze, who needs validation.
Right.
Sorry.
Mm. Mm. What about some other characters? Like, what about Mizuho? What do you think like the character arc for Mizuho is?
Or Mizuho. I think initially she was very quiet and shy, but she didn't want to
And,
talk to other people. She
she was very
didn't.
manipulative in the start, I think, when they first showed her.
I wouldn't say manipulative.
He can
Uh,
continue.
the, when she was sorry, continue.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like when she's introduced in the anime, like she is blamed for a thing which she didn't do. She didn't do, but she still doesn't say anything about it. She is very childish in her arguments, which happens, when people try to blame you about something and you're immature, they will not put a sound reasoning to it to deny the argument. They'll just say, yeah, I didn't do it, or don't mess with me, or don't trouble me, or something like that. Uh, but she also grows out of it. So she is also a kid that is shown in the particular character in the anime, and she also grows. She also learns things throughout the movie. She also leaves her cats. Like in the starting, like a movie, the only thing she cares about her cat and herself. But later on, as she is with Nagara and Nazumi, she grows out of that shell, and it also cares about other things, other people, and other
Hmm.
things.
Even if you see like the last episode when he's waiting outside the gate, they've come back, he looks at her and she just goes away and she doesn't like want to talk, but then she realizes no, that this is a shared, we shared something, and so he is a friend, I need to talk to him, and so she goes back to him. I think that just showed that she's not the same as she was before.
Hmm. What do you guys think about the themes and symbolisms of the show? What are the themes and symbolisms you got out from the show, let's say?
A lot, but you have to be more specific because there's too many.
One could be isolation and loneliness. One could be loss and grief, you could say. One could be,
Loss and grief, I don't think was shown too much.
but
I
it was
think,
shown, right? It was explored.
okay,
There were scenarios about, the very first episode was about power and responsibility, I would think.
right. I agree.
So they actually, so my point is they actually delve into a lot of things that, like in the very first episode, when these guys realize that they don't have any power, sorry, when they have some sort of new power, they have to come to grips with that fact and, not try to mess everything up. There are some people who try to take a very structured approach, like the student council. They try to keep everything in law and order. There are people who try to do some or everything in between. They try to follow them, they don't follow them. It's like in between. And some people who are just trying to break the law, they don't try to stay in that path. Right. So they explore this concept very well in this manner also. And they make Cap the first, I think, the president of that place or the president, what do you call it? I don't know, leader of that place or something. But when he goes and hits Asakaze with the bat in that scene, he also gets, for not following the rules of that world, he also gets penalized for that fact. So they also explore these concepts in like a very wholesome manner and not just like a very general manner. Anything that it stood out for you guys in this show? Any specific show
Um,
episode?
Loneliness, so I completely agree. Even our lead character, he himself sees that he's, separate from other people. Like he has already accepted it. That's why in the starting he's like, no, I will not have any power. He's not even tried, he's not done anything. He's just accepted that fact right then and there that I'm nothing special. I think this is also one of the themes that people don't realize the kind of inner confidence that they could possibly have. Everybody feels, that somebody else is much better than them, that they are nothing and everybody else is somebody. So that feeling, I think, is explored way too much. Uh, yeah,
I think loneliness can also be.
Also,
Uh, look, मैं complete रहता है
also,
इसके point के related है. The thing with that is the loneliness part, if you're saying, is also it's very resonateful, is resonating when you think about it in the general sense. Like even throughout the show, it's like very that he builds a whole vibe of loneliness only. It's not like it's like very specific to any episode. It's like very lonely in every episode. The background is like that, the music is like that, everything is like very, it gives you a feel of loneliness on yourself when you're watching it on your own, all alone.
I think because it's the entire show is very realistic in nature. Okay, so up, uh, there is no life out of the box or larger than life picture that is shown to you, as it's in every anime that we'll see. Okay, every popular anime that is there, there is a larger than life picture that is there. But this is a very realistic and subtle and humble show, so everything is like that. The design, the music, the characters, the dialogue that they are having. Coming back to the themes that is there in the movie, I think one of the most, I think, profound dialogues that I've heard in entire cinema. Okay, I'm not talking about just anime. Is by Rajdhani about growing old. This is like he comes back. I think it's episode 8 or 9 when he comes back to help Nagara and Mizoho. So he talks about growing old. Like he has lived 2,000 years and he comes back through that. So he talks about like how when you go old, things are getting so much irregular that you can't make sense of anything, or you things are getting so much similar that it doesn't feel special to you. For example, if you grow old, you will have kids, or you won't have kids, whatever. Okay, like there is a particular commonality that will share with the entire world that you are living in, and that dilutes our experience. Like every one of us would face the first uh, would feel agitated for the first job. Every one of us would feel good when we have first kid. Or like these are shared experiences that are common, okay? That each and everyone that has lived on this planet would have shared at one particular point of time. So that takes away from the individual experience that we are having, the mass experience that we all have.
I think this is an excellent point that Hardik has brought up because when you think about a lot of young kids, they don't realize that the experiences that they're feeling, it's not unique. So many people are going through it. And that is something that the show has captured quite brilliantly, as Hardik mentioned through the dialogue. When you grow older, you realize everybody is going through more or less the same thing you are. You're not alone, you're not unique in that perspective. Uh,
Mm.
it does make life simpler, I would say.
Mm. One of the themes also they, I think, delve into is self-discovery in this. Like every character, in the initial stages has to realize what kind of person they are, and they have to change relating to that once they figure out what's holding them back. Especially with Nagara, you could say, like the main character in the show. He, I think he kind of realizes that he has to step up once he figures out what his power is. He needs to figure a way. He realizes that he has to be the one to figure out the way for these guys to come out from whatever the place they are in the worlds that they are present in. So, you know, it also gives you a chance to see that they're also realizing these facts in that. So it's like one small theme, not small theme. They also explore this kind of theme in a general sense.
Like a point related to that, okay, uh, so if you see if there is any anime a person is saving the world or something like that happens, he is shown as heroic. That person is heroic, be it any character. But in this particular anime, Nagara is not shown as heroic, or it's not very up camera shot, like he's put on the pedestal. That is not the case in this particular show. Asakaze tries to do that and fails. Nagara, on the other hand, which is um, which is in the based which is based in the real world, he is not a hero. Okay, even though he saves him and Mizuho, he's not a hero. Okay, that is not shown. That is not how shown in the movie. That is just one thing he's capable of doing, and he just does that. It is not shown in a very heroic manner. And even if he saves himself and Mizo, things do not change. Okay, so in that sense, even if you do something heroic in your own life as well, like for example, if you earn 1,000 crore rupees, for example, just take an example, or $1 billion, it doesn't change anything about you. In that sense, this is a much more inner experience than the outer world. In your inner experience, no matter what big achievement that you do in the outside world, your inner experience doesn't change that.
Mm.
Even if you see when in life in general, when they go back 2 years later, they're going back, they could be thinking that, life might be changed or something, and they have gone through something so huge. But it's not. It's as normal as it is. They're just going back, they're just doing the normal stuff. He's sitting at home all alone, eating that packaged food. I mean, that itself was like a killer shot right then and there. In the end,
Uh,
it's all going to come back to the same as it was. So yeah,
They don't
but
try
you
to even
change as a person. Sorry,
they don't try to confront God also after they come back. Why he did that to them,
uh,
in a sense.
nothing like that. They realize that it's just free will. Even like when the principal is there and he doesn't stop them. You shouldn't,
Hmm.
but it's not that you can't. It's you shouldn't. Um, Beautiful.
In that sense, when you're saying that there is no change, then no change is in the everyday life that they're living. Or even if you are like, for example, if you see a legendary actor, or any legendary actor, director, any creator, or a legendary, even any person, okay, any legend, they are living the same lives as us. It is just the inner experience, the inner strength that they have that separates them from us. But everything on the level, on the eye, looks same. So even though the outer world has not changed, the inner world has enhanced. I think that is what the last episode is all about.
Hmm.
Makes
What do you
sense.
guys think? What about the symbolisms? Like, what are you talking about what do you think the worlds, the changing worlds symbolize in the show?
Changing events, just changing like life around you will change. The environment around you, you will change. Like when you so in I don't know, for the third or fourth episode, when they finally understand what Nagara's power actually is, it's not about resetting. It's not about transporting them to another world. It was about creating a new world and taking them
Hmm.
there. That itself tells you all you need to know. It's not about something that already exists. You create it yourself. When you experience something new, you are in an unfamiliar situation, and then you deal with it through your,
Hmm.
principles and values. That is how you define yourself. That's how you then change your approach if you want to learn and basically have sort of like a character arc.
Hmm. True.
Very well
So,
put.
what else? Were there any specific symbolisms you guys thought besides this, the worlds?
Also, it is interesting to know that in the starting of the in the starting of the series, rules are mentioned. So there are some rules that the people have to follow. Be it capitalism on the island, that we have to pay to do something to get something. That is a rule of the world that we live in. Okay, if you are any capitalistic society, you have to pay to get something. So that rules of the world in the starting when you are a teenager are difficult to grapple with. Okay, when you're new in the world, these unsaid rules have to be followed no matter what. And that depiction, the starting of the movie makes sense. Okay, later on it doesn't even appear because it is a fact that we live with. Right now, nobody needs to tell us that do this, do that. We understand these things. We accepted those things in our world, and then things are taken much more about inner experiences and the conflict that we have, and not about the rules. I think that is also one thing that is very greatly expressed in the movie, in the series.
Hmm. Okay, can you guys like relate this style of creation, direction, storytelling to anyone specific?
I
Like
felt I got a
anything,
lot of
and they could have taken inspiration from.
I got a lot of Murakami vibes. I mentioned that before
Hmm.
also, but I
Hmm.
got a lot of Murakami vibes. Just a sort of normal life, people experiencing something extraordinary. That's basically what Murakami always does. And that's what they also had here. Some sort of an ending which does not really satisfy you, but you know that that is what should happen. So in
Hmm.
that way, yes, I think it was very. I don't know if the director or the writer was actually inspired from Murakami. I haven't done that research, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were.
I don't think so. Like it can be attributed to any. I don't know. Okay, I don't have some information, but I think it's in the way that it is treated and done. I think it's very personal. the experience to the director or the writer who has made this show. So I don't think so. It would be, uh, yeah, it can be similar to someone, but I think it's very personal to the writer director, and he has come up with himself the entire show.
Hmm. There's also like a resemblance from David Lynch's movies, like that recurring symbols, cryptic imagery. It's like a blend of his psychological films, such as like Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive, something like that. Okay, so we touched upon this a bit, like the ending of the show. So let's just talk a bit about that more. I think we heard Kanish's perspective. Let's talk about Hardik's perspective now a bit. What he thought the ending was.
I said about it. Okay, so I thought uh, if you see physically, or if you see the surroundings of the world, it doesn't change. The lifestyle of the person doesn't change. It is the only the inner experience that is elevated, and that is what not can be seen by naked eye. Okay, so in that sense, of course, people, because there is a things have happened, people expect a certain level rise up, that something else happens to him, he becomes very happy, or something else happens in his life. But in general, when we have some certain experiences, our normal lives do not change significantly. It's the normal lives are just the same. It is just that inner values and inner experiences enhance. So that is why for some of the people it may be disappointing to see, like, what is this, like, there's nothing has changed, it's all the same. So what is the point of that? Because we're used to that hero's journey of achieving something and becoming much more bigger than life. But in this particular show, it is done realistically, and there's nothing much difference shown. But as said by Ganesh, in the last, the bird, that he saves the bird or he takes care of the bird, is the symbolism that he's not the same person as before, and he has started to stood up for the people and things around him.
Hmm. Also, I think in the end, also when he doesn't get to talk to Nozomi the way he wants to, like a romantic sense, you would think. I think that also like, just shows reality of it. Like even if something, even if you change or everything good happens, or even if maybe let's just save the world, it's not like reality is not going to be like people are just going to come to you. It also actually adds the sense of his character building throughout the show. Like if you think about it, if Nagara was some in the start, they showed him like a very passive and introverted person. But if they showed that in the end he gets the girl, he gets Nozomi or something, it kind of would have portrayed that he was doing everything just to get to her. And then the moment when they showed that he wasn't going to get Nozomi and just walked away, it kind of just solidified the fact that the whole show was about self-reflection and upliftment, you could say. So he was one character who went through that journey, and he was the one who figured out. Not he was the only one, but he was the one who he could see that throughout the episodes he was the one who grew the most because he was the main character. So we kind of learned from his storyline the most. But he was one character who, through his self discovery, self introspection, and all those things, he was the one who grew the most and was perfectly reflected in the very last episode, last scene of that when he didn't get Nozomi in that.
It's another way of looking at it also, that in real life that does not happen. You are always the lead character of your movie, and it's not always that you get the girl. So that's another way
Mm.
of looking at it, that in the end he's just a normal guy. He's nothing special or nothing different.
That is what happens. Even if you grow, if you have something like an experience and you become a better person in the world, it doesn't necessarily reflect that you have a good equation with that particular person. You have to build that. So automatically nothing will happen. You have to build that relationship. I think that is what uh, is shown by the last scene, where he is a stranger right now. So he can't, no matter what experiences they have gone through, but he's a stranger right now. So he has to build that
Okay, so this
trust with her.
moves us to the very last point. What do you guys think Sonny Boy as the title meant?
I have. I mean, maybe it was.
What is
Do either of you know what the actual Japanese name means?
yes?
Was
What is the Japanese name?
because Sonny Boy could be a translation because of which we are sort of getting lost in translation.
No, it's Sonny Boy only. It's Sonny Boy, SANIBOY,
Ah,
and in
and
English it's Sonny Boy,
First of all,
SONNY.
so it may be like what I read was that possibly it can be also be tribute to someone. Okay, because the characters are some from are not necessarily original. So some characters have been taken from other manga artists. So that is one thing. But if I say it's sunny, okay, I'm taking it not as Sony as sunny, okay. Sunshine, okay. So sunshine, if you see, there is a power that is given to him. That is of that is there is a fur ball that is given to Nagara by Rajdhani, where it just smells beautiful and it doesn't do anything else. But it stays the same no matter what you go through life. I think that is what a particular symbolism that you can see that the person has evolved, has become beautiful in itself. He has no certain particular power as such, but the beautiful and the sunshine that he has, he can go through with that throughout his life. I think one thing that we can do that, Sunny Boy.
I honestly have no idea. I didn't think about this at all. It could be what Hardik said. I personally have no clue.
All right, guys, this was for the episode. I hope you enjoyed our conversation reviewing Sonny Boy. If you liked the episode, do like, share, and subscribe. Do share it with your friends. Do write in the comments what you thought about that anime. Write also what you want us to maybe, speak about next in our podcast episodes. If you guys have any, advice for us, anything we can do better, also let us know in the comments below. And do check us out on any audio streaming platform out there, all the famous ones. It's all linked below in the description. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.